So one of the biggest questions that I see being asked here on my channel is how can you get more Masterwork and legendary items to drop for you, and how can you reach that Masterwork power level faster? There's definitely a lot of guides here on YouTube pointing you to the appropriate type of content that you should be doing in order to achieve this, but most of them never go into a full detail about how you can maximize these methods as well as making them as efficient as possible. For the record, I have all of my Javelins at over 490 power level, with the exception of course of the Ranger, which I simply cannot be bothered to play right now, but I could easily break 500 item level with these. The reason I'm not doing this is because I have some really powerful Masterworks that I don't want to sacrifice for some legendaries. Nonetheless, you already know that I have my Storm and my Interceptor both at Masterwork level, and I've been playing with the Interceptor and maining it for the past week or so, having a ton of fun with it. But recently, like a couple of days back, I started playing with my Colossus, which had literally zero gear on it, not even epics, as I salvaged everything to make room for the Masterworks. So how do you level from nothing to 490 power level? Well, I'm going to be showing my top 5 methods on how I did to increase this, and you won't need to be a no-lifer at this game. I personally am playing like 5 hours a day, and recently less than that. I have my YouTube, which I post daily, sometimes even 2 times a day. I have my real life stuff going on, so I don't have time all day to play Anthem, yet I still have enough to make these methods as efficient as possible and get as many items as possible. And no, you don't need to like cheese anything, you don't need like huge luck or anything. All you need to do is to apply some very good principles and repeat them over and over again. So let's start things off with one of my preferred methods and probably the best method on this list. We have the legendary contracts. I've talked about these in a previous video a few days back. Nonetheless, normally you only have access to 3 legendary contracts per day, and that guarantees you at a minimum 3 Masterwork items. The thing that you can do in order to maximize this and make it as efficient as possible is to play with a group of friends. These are shareable between a party of people, and if you have like 10 friends for example, you can do as many as 30 contracts per day, maybe even more. So even with a group of 4, you have a guaranteed of 12 legendary contracts between a party of 4, which means at a minimum 12 Masterwork items only from the legendary contracts alone. So with that, you should at the very least fully equip a whole Javelin in a single day. If you get unlucky and all of that, it might take a couple of days or 3 days, but just with these contracts and with this method of playing with your friends, you will probably equip your entire Javelin in no time, and that doesn't even take into account the fact that you'll be getting drops from the enemies as well, and you'll definitely see some Masterworks and even legendary items in there as well, especially when you're fighting the legendary enemies. Now the biggest question is, how do you even make friends in Anthem? And the answer is actually quite simple. There's actually 3 ways you can do this, and the first one of course is by going on the official Discord for Anthem. There's a link down below you can go ahead and check out, but you can also find it on the official Anthem subreddit, and there's a link in there as well if you want to check it out. Every single day there's people in there looking for groups and pretty much farming these contracts. The second method is to use the subreddit for Anthem looking for group, and there's also a lot of people in there. It's a little bit slower, but you can also use that if you don't want to like use Discord for some reason. The third method of course also involves Discord, but this time around you can go ahead and check my server, and there's people over there on all of the platforms always looking for group and always trying to farm these contracts. So these are the 3 main ways you can do it right now, and this is what I've been doing in the past couple of weeks. No matter what day it was when I had a reset, I made sure I was able to do it with a group of other 4 people. If my friends weren't online at the time I was doing them, or if they weren't available, I would simply go on these channels, search for people and play with them to make sure I'm getting at least 12 items per day. And this is just from the legendary contracts, mind you. The second way to do it is through crafting, and I know this might come as a surprise to many of you, but crafting is the most reliable way of getting Masterworks. And how you do it is very simple. You first need to get your preferred Masterwork weapon or gear piece. It doesn't matter how bad the stats on it are, it doesn't really matter. All you need to do is have it drop and then use it in combat. In the case of the Masterwork weapons, it's super easy. All you need to do is kill 10 legendaries with that weapon, and the best 2 methods to do so is by going into the Tyrant Mine and clearing the first 2 sections, or even better, going into the Temple of the Scar, and the first 2 sections over there contain a ton of legendary enemies. Similarly, with the gear you need to complete 35 events or missions, and again I recommend doing the free play for this, as events over there are super fast and you'll be pretty much doing like a couple of free free play runs for like 2 hours and already have one of those blueprints unlocked. From here on you pretty much know what it is. It unlocks you the blueprint and then you can use the crafting materials to continuously craft until you get like huge bonuses on them. So for example, let's say you want a Masterwork Devastator and what you can do is simply craft it over and over again until you see one of the inscriptions saying plus 150 damage bonus, for example, or somewhere along these lines. Nonetheless, it's this reliable method that will help you out, not just increase the power levels, but also increase your overall damage, as these inscriptions definitely make a difference. But of course, it's RNG, so you will need to do it over and over again and farm it. If you want to see a method on how to farm these, I'm going to post a link down below, also explaining what you need to do and what routes you need to follow. The third best method, at least in my case, and I saw a lot of success with it, is doing some free play, and not just events. Events are definitely good, and the event chests can definitely drop Masterworks and even legendaries, but I haven't seen them being that rewarding compared to, for example, simple drops from NPCs. For some reason, NPCs have been way more rewarding to me. So what I did is I did the dungeons in the game. Every now and then you're going to find either patrols out in the wild or these hidden dungeons. You can enter in them, they're behind loading screens and whatnot. You can see them on the map with the brick archway icon. So in them there's not going to be events, but there are enemy spawns and there's going to be waves of enemies. A lot of legendary enemies spawn in here, especially after the first wave, and I even did so with my Colossus. And between these three methods it only took me like a couple of days to get everything in check. The only thing that I'm kind of missing right now is like an ability, and from here on obviously to go full legendary, but I'm going to go over the full legendary thing in just a bit. The fourth method is of course by doing the strongholds, and there's a couple of ways in which you can do these strongholds. Personally, I was farming Tire Mine for a very long time until I realized it's maybe not the most efficient way, even though I have huge DPS and I can clear it up in like 15 to 20 minutes if I do a full run on Grandmaster 1. But what you can do is instead only farm the first two chests, and if you are the type of person who wants to do the first two chests, then you can do it better in the Temple of the Scar or even faster in the Heart of Rage. In the Heart of Rage, it's not worth it to do the end boss, it's only worth it to do the first two chests. The reason behind this is because you reach them much faster compared to the previous strongholds, which typically have longer objectives before achieving that. The second section of the Heart of Rage also spawns a ton of very big enemies. We have a Titan, we have legendary Furies, we have a lot of brutes, also legendary variants, and it's definitely worth it for you to do that. They're going to drop a ton of items for you, and they have the highest chances of also giving Masterworks and legendaries. I've done that and it was definitely very lucrative. Of course, this isn't something you'll be getting in 5 minutes, 10 minutes of playtime, but if you do it like a couple of hours per day, you're definitely going to see an improvement. Nonetheless, the first three methods are the most important ones. Now, as you progress through the island levels and reach 490 is where things start getting interesting, and here is when you can start pretty much soloing any Grandmaster 1 type of content. I mean literally anything in Grandmaster 1 at 494 item level that I currently have on all of my classes, and because I'm using some very good powerful loadouts, I'm able to pretty much solo any encounter in the game with only like a couple of exceptions. And if I screw things up, specifically the end boss in the Temple of the Scar, which has a really nasty phase if you're solo, so yeah, that is a no-go. But I can farm solo legendary contracts, free play, Tyrant Mine. The same goes with the Temple of the Scar up until the last boss, and once you know you can solo Grandmaster 1 is when you can start moving into Grandmaster 2, assuming you have an organized group. And many people are putting off Grandmaster 2 saying that, well, it's not worth it for the amount of time you put into it. That is completely not true. Grandmaster 2 has 4 times the chances of dropping Masterwork and legendary items, and even though in one single run you might be seeing, let's say, a lot of useless items, if you do an average between these two, you will always find Grandmaster 2 being more rewarding in terms of the number of Masterworks and even legendaries that you'd be getting. But of course, this is something that you'd be doing with a very organized party with some very powerful loadouts. Unless you have 100% coordination, and unless your party members are on the same level as you, specifically 490 plus, then you're not going to see any good results. If you do instead have this kind of party, you're definitely going to see some very awesome results. That's what I've been doing, and the highest item level players that I've seen have always done this. Some of them even broke into Grandmaster 3 and are doing it semi-regularly, but of course that is a little bit too hard to even be, taken into account. That is why Grandmaster 2 is where I suggest you guys stop. But that is all that I have for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, a thumbs up would be super appreciated. Also aim that sub button if you want to, and I'll see you guys next time.